The claim today that Ukrainian forces have invaded Russia in the Kursk region is certainly not borne out by any admission from Ukraine. And Putin has gone on record talking about this, and a lot of Russians have been evacuated from their homes. There are strategic reasons, apparently, behind this operation and the broader implications of the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia are, according to Facebook messages which have been picked up by the BBC, are positive for Ukraine. When Kyiv launched this offensive, the BBC claims, many military experts question the rationale behind such a move. Ukraine facing a significant manpower disadvantage against Russia that has so many people that it can draw into the military, though it doesn't have as many weapons and as much clothing. I mean, it can't clothe all the soldiers it conscripts. But Ukraine seems to be undertaking a seemingly counterintuitive strategy. But this operation is not without its strategic calculations, says the BBC. Konstantin Mashovitz, a war expert, has said that the incursion was not accidental but part of a broader strategic plan. And according to Mashovitz, the operation aimed to disrupt Russian military operations by forcing them to redeploy troops from critical frontline positions in eastern Ukraine to the Kursk region. And this redeployment was reportedly done to decrease Russian aerial bombardments of in the Donetsk area. And this is a theory put out by Mikhailo Zirovkov in a statement to the BBC. The diversion of Russian military assets to counter the Russian incursion could relieve pressure on key battlegrounds in Ukraine, potentially altering the dynamics of the conflict. The historical context is significant as well, because Russia's cross-border offensive into Ukraine's northeastern Kharkiv region last year and the subsequent permission granted by the United States for Ukraine to use its missiles on targets inside Russia suggests a precedent for this operation. But the fear of a similar Russian attack into Ukraine's northern region has also been a constant concern. So this might be a preemptive measure by the Ukrainian forces. Despite the scale of this operation, Ukraine has been silent, and only the smallest information has leaked out to the BBC. And even that, it's certainly not clear whether the BBC has actually got genuine Ukrainian information. The silence contrasts sharply with the reaction from the Russian authorities, who quickly reported the assault, announced casualties, declared a state of emergency, and the Russian Defense Ministry has confirmed the redeployment of its troops into the Kursk region, indicating the serious impact that the Ukrainian incursion has had. Putin and his administration have framed this attack as barbaric, and Maria Zakharova has called the Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson has called the incursion barbaric in a statement. We call on the international community, she said, not to stand by and to resolutely condemn the criminal actions of the Kyiv regime. Well, you know, it wasn't the Kyiv regime that invaded a sovereign country. The Kyiv regime is simply responding. Fighters from Ukraine have apparently made brief incursions into Russia before, and some units of Russians fighting in support of Kyiv, the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Freedom of Russia Legion, and Putin has talked about a new offensive in the northeast of Ukraine, but the attacks here are sort of significant, and security sources in Ukraine have reported to the BBC and to France, but very discreetly, that Kyiv had struck a Russian helicopter using a drone on Tuesday, for example, over the Kursk region, but they didn't link this to the incursion into the Kursk region. Ukrainian presidential aide Mikhailo Podolyak has alluded to the attacks. He said that Moscow used its border regions with impunity for massive air and artillery attacks. He said this on social media. Gerasimov has said at least 100 Ukrainian troops were killed in the attack and that 54 armoured vehicles, including 7 tanks, were destroyed, but the claim hasn't been verified independently. Rybar, a Russian telegram channel with military links, said Ukrainian forces had made small inroads across the border and occupied several small settlements. It said that Kyiv's troops had reached the outskirts of Sudzha, but that Russian forces had pushed them back. I mean, it's interesting that Ukraine isn't making a great deal about this. It's a calculated risk. Zelensky has said the more pressure is exerted on the aggressor that brought the war to Ukraine, the closer peace will be. And this incursion could be an attempt by Ukraine to add pressure to that drive for peace. The operation has introduced new variables into the conflict. Its ultimate success will depend on its ability to influence Russian military strategy and to contribute to a broader peace process. But it is fascinating to see Ukraine on the offensive rather than on the defensive. The complexity of this situation underscores the intricate balance of tactical decisions in modern warfare and the continuous interplay of military actions and political objectives.